Today we're talking about a king who liked to kill kids. Last week we talked about Uzziah and how his pride led to his demise. Well, this week we're talking about Uzziah's grandson, Ahaz. Ahaz's grandfather and father had been God-fearing kings, but Ahaz was not. Instead, he mixed the worship of Yahweh or God with the worship of many different idols. He offered sacrifices and burned incense at the high places under every spreading tree, and he even sacrificed his own sons in the fire to these different gods. Because of this, God gave him and his people into the hands of their enemies. The Arameans, the Edomites, the Philistines, even the people of Israel, all of these people were severely oppressing the people of Judah. God was hoping that Ahaz and the nation of Israel would humble themselves and ask him for help, but they didn't. Instead, they turned to the people of Assyria. To better understand today's story, I want to show you a map of the land at that time. So Assyria was a very powerful nation, considered a superpower of the ancient world. They were extremely brutal, cruel, heartless, and terrifying, and often they would ruthlessly torture and rape their victims, plunder and pillage and destroy anyone who got in their way. And they were on the move. They were trying to take over basically the world. So when Ahaz was trying to make a truce with Tiglath-Pileser, the current king of Assyria, it was like he was making a deal with the devil. He was trying to stop all of that torture and pillaging from coming to the people of Judah. God sent many prophets to the people of Judah to warn them to stop worshiping these idols and to trust in God instead of trusting in the Assyrians. They weren't really listening. So Isaiah, Hosea, and Micah, those books of the Bible, were all written at this time in Judah's history. All of these prophets continually warned them that if they continued to trust in Assyria and worship idols and be rebellious and evil, then God would use Assyria to punish them. But in the midst of all of the doom and gloom and the evilness of Ahaz, the prophets, they also prophesied hope. Yes, God was going to use Assyria to punish the people of Judah, but then God was going to punish the Assyrians. God was going to send a Messiah in the future, somebody who would be born in Bethlehem, somebody who would heal the people and would turn people's hearts back to God and ultimately would die in their place. This Savior would ultimately be one of Ahaz's descendants, Jesus. There's honestly nothing redeeming about this story. Ahaz was just an evil guy. But I think there's still some things that we can learn from his life. And the first thing is, whatever you worship, you will sacrifice for. Ahaz worshiped false idols. And because he worshiped these false idols and was trying to manipulate them into getting what he wanted, he sacrificed his own kids in the fire. He killed his own kids. Honestly, I don't think today we're much different. We still sacrifice maybe our families, maybe time, maybe our relationship with God, or different relationships with people. We sacrifice a lot of things for the things that we worship. Maybe you worship money, maybe you worship sex, maybe you just worship yourself and your own desires. Whatever you worship, you will sacrifice for. Aren't you grateful that God was willing to sacrifice everything for us? And because of this, it makes me want to sacrifice my all for him. The second thing I think we can learn today is Ahaz was not willing to humble himself before God, but Jesus would. In order for Ahaz to turn to God, he would have had to humble himself. He would have had to say, God, I actually need your help. He would have had to give up his rebellious ways and start living for God. He wasn't willing to do that. But Jesus, he did not consider equality with God something to be used for his own advantage. Instead, he humbled himself. He took on the nature of a servant. He became a person, a human being, and he humbled himself and was willing to die for us. My prayer is that you can see for yourself maybe some idols you've been worshiping, and also that you can be encouraged that following Jesus is worth it. Happy Wednesday. See ya.
One thing I've sacrificed for all of Jesus is family. Ever since I started working as a missionary, I have not lived anywhere close to my family. And especially this year during the pandemic, it's been hard not having family. Has it been worth it? Yes. God has taught me to rely on Him, and He's given me an extended family that I never ever would have had if I hadn't followed Him.